You are with the morning programme on Destination Uri. I'm Rowan Hand. My guest, and a very welcome guest, is Father Michael Cusack, who's the rector of St. Joseph's the Redemptorist Monastery, let's call it, for want of a better word, in Dundalk. How are you, Michael?
That's it. I'm great, Rowan. Thanks very much, and nice to be with you again.
It's great. It's 2 years.
Absolutely, yeah, but it's a beautiful day.
It is indeed. Can you work out by some priestly formula where time goes?
Honest to God, I have no idea. It's really flying, and once the older you get, I think the quicker it goes. So.
Tell me about that.
Yeah.
So in broad sweeping terms, how is the world of Dundalk and the Redemptorists these days?
Well, Dundalk's going well. Very busy there in the monastery. Everybody getting older, as you've pointed out. We don't have the blessing, I suppose, of new blood coming into us. So that's a little bit of a challenge for us at the moment. But monastery-wise, everything going well. We actually have planning permission in to extend the monastery at the moment. Because we have to sort of rethink all of our work here in Ireland and relocate our assets into one or other location. So Dundalk has been chosen, and that is a big bonus and a blessing to us because it means the monastery is safe for a while.
Is Clonard safe?
Clonard's safe. Yeah.
Wow, Dundalk and Clonard.
Yeah, and Limerick is safe too.
Yeah.
I mean, they're the big houses, and I suppose they'd be the more difficult ones to dispose of. And they'd also be the ones with significant ministry still, you know. Yeah. So it's easier to try and maybe facilitate the movement of people from other houses that are less important, from one to another.
Yeah. When I phoned for you the other day, very kindly lady told me you were hearing confessions.
I was indeed, yeah.
So in the cherry-picking world of religion nowadays, are people valuing confession? Are they going as often? I see references, there are no longer confession boxes in churches, there's
confessional rooms,
this sort of thing. And
we have both. We have the option of both. People are still going to confession. I mean, some people are going too often, and they'll always be there. You know, there are others who don't go at all. And I'll have to say, you know, probably surprisingly enough, there are quite a few who are coming back to confession, and that's the point that sort of jigs me every time, because I'm thinking, you know, at least people know there is this space, you know. A lot of what confession did in the past, I suppose, or was supposed to do, has been taken over by counsellors, and but you have to pay for all those services, you know. And sometimes somebody wanting to just start again in their lives, wanting to rid themselves of the guilt of the past, maybe they know that if they can only embrace the loving God and accept it, that there's a start there for them. So it's not unheard of to have a new story come into the confessional box, you know, of somebody, and it's great to hear it actually. What I really value about that is knowing that people still know that they can come. You know,
absolutely.
Rather than saying, no, that's something that we've assigned to the trash can.
No. But do you reckon that a loving God requires Rowan Hand or Joe Bloggs out there to go to confession?
I think a loving God is needed by people who don't have that image of God in their lives, you know, and for far too long people have sort of nurtured an image of a God who is cruel and judgmental, and I mean, there's nobody else to blame for that but the church for teaching and presenting that type of a saviour, you know, somebody who you had to hold account to and who held account with you, rather than saying, okay, this isn't about you being condemned for being a bad person. This is about you wanting to embrace the love that God gives you and the gifts that God gives you and live them out to the best of your ability, and then life goes good. I was listening on the way over to an interview, and it was on RTE radio, and I don't actually know, it's the fellow who does the Homes of Ireland. It's sort of a television program, but he was talking about alcoholism and his own struggle with it, you know, and very much in that he was talking about the need to recognise, you know, that there is bad in the world, and that certain things are bad for you, and when you identify things and start moving forward in a positive way, then it's only then that you begin to see the light. So I suppose confession's a bit like that too.
You come across people constantly in need. You're helping those people. The message of the God of love is there, ubi caritas et amor Deus ibi est, where charity and love are, there is God. Do we need much more than that mantra of These?
We don't need to pile more than that, but it's getting that on board, getting that into your head and into your heart that's a difficult thing. You know, it's hard to understand the God of love at times, because if your relationships are up the left, you know, I mean, where's God there? You know, I was with a man yesterday evening. I was out visiting in the nursing home, and an elderly man with his wife, and he was telling me, you know, he suffers from depression, and yet his daily journey and diet is sitting holding his wife's hand. She has Alzheimer's. She won't be around for much longer. He has to dig out every day, you know. And he asked the question, you know, where is God in the middle of that? You know, and I said, well, I can definitely see God here with you.
Yes,
you know,
yes.
what you're doing with your wife. But he said, I have to dig so deep. And I said, regrettably, that's life. You know, you have to. I mean, where is God in so many of the difficulties of the modern world?
There are perhaps, and I've struggled with this, as you may know, to find out the answer to that particular dilemma. And I don't come up with answers. But what I rather think is that there are things that we're not supposed to really get to the bottom of. We're not able to get to the bottom of it. But there are beautiful things that we can easily get to the bottom of, and if I can find it here, I'll give you an example of it. And it's the story of the people who, I have it here somewhere. Yeah, I'll find it as we go on. These were things that I had written while down in Spain. But essentially, what I was coming across was the notion of the deteriorating human body. It's not pleasant to see those who are in the twilight zone down in Spain with all the ugliness that physical old age brings and all the brokenness that it brings. And then you spot the quiet smile between an old gentleman and an old lady, where a smile at first was exchanged 80 years ago. You then see them holding hands and walking. You see that, and then you know that God's plan for them is in the unspokenness, not on the physicality and all the rest of it. So I flutter in and out of that kind of observation, and it helps me a bit along the way. But ultimately, when I consider that the God of Jesus, the Father, who sent his Son to earth, also sent his angels down to tell the Holy Family to hightail it into Egypt, that Herod was going to murder all the children. He didn't tell the neighbours. He told his own lot. And that puzzles me dreadfully. Because if we're obeying the word of Jesus, we'll tell the neighbours first.
Well, yeah, I know. When you're going back in the historic things, things are very complicated. But as you say, even today, you know, when you look at the day-to-day happenings of our world, it's nearly hard to believe in a God at times. And yet, if you know how to read the world we live in, like you've mentioned there, you know, opening your eyes to the right things, then you see the goodness, and you have no doubt that the goodness is God, you know, and that where love is, there is God. I mean, you don't need any more than that. You don't need any more than the birth of a new baby, you know. You don't need any more than the joy that one person brings to another by being present with them, or the goodness of people, you know. And it's the goodness of people, I think, that very often we fail to see. You know, we're whingers by and large, and great at pointing out the negative things, but there's great goodness in our world, and great giving, and there's great commitment on the part of people, and particularly the old, you know. Old age isn't nice. It's not nice for anybody.
Bones get sore.
But there are amazing things done in old age, you know. My own, since I was here last, I'm sure since I was here last, my mother had a stroke, and my father has become her carer. Now he's 81 this year, and he was never a carer. And I say that with complete kindness towards him. He was just carried all his life by my mother. And he has turned around now to prove that he's been able to do so much. You know, I mean, he's really stepped up to the mark. And we have, I was saying to somebody recently, thank God he didn't die before this, you know. We'd never have seen this side of him. And thank God again on that, because we would have no carer for my mother, you know.
Of course.
She's totally dependent on him, totally trusting of him, and he's really stepping up to the mark. I mean, he has his faults and failings like the rest of us have, and there are those shades still there. But I mean, we see at 81 years of age a part of him emerging that's really good to see.
But that's a God equation in the algebra of life. It has to be that old gentleman, your father, has an unbreakable link to your mother that surrounds the pair of them, and they're there, he's helping, she's receiving the help, they're communicating in some way. That is the most
But there's an
extraordinary, beautiful thing.
It is, and there's an interesting other aspect of it. I mean, both of my parents would have been daily mass goers. Now there's no daily mass. The mass is what they do with each other. You know what I mean?
Yes.
But they have their own prayer and their own way, and they adapt to that. But there really is no need for mass right now. And they don't even get their weekly mass because one isn't free to leave the other. But who needs it there?
In that
if they're being the
circumstance.
sacrament themselves, just like that is what marriage is about, and it's about being the sacrament and being the witness of God there, and I can see it very clearly with them.
They're the people who nurtured your faith when you were a boy.
In ways, and they challenged it too.
At what stage? Where did you come from, and at what stage along the timeline did God start tugging you by the ear and say, "Come this way, Mike"?
Look, I was brought up in a pretty religious family. We lived in Monaghan at the time, and we would have been, like many people of our day, daily mass goers as a family. And we prayed at home, all that uncomfortable prayer of, being forced into the rosary in the evening, and you can't misbehave, and you can't laugh during it.
I thought I was escaping that when I went to college in Belfast and went into a flat. But didn't the landlady bring us all into the parlour and made us kneel down and say the prayers?
Yeah, and there was no harm, clearly it worked for its time, and I mean, there's a great lack of it nowadays. Even a sense of prayer. I often try to challenge people to say, we must bring God into our home. God can't be something that's shelved. God has to be there all the time. So for me, that's where I suppose I went to the Patrician Brothers primary and secondary school, and I was always impressed by them. It's so sad to hear the sad stories of violence and abuse amongst the religious. Because my experience, there was one or two cross brothers, all right, but there was never any of that. We weren't in institutional care, of course, and we had very cross lay teachers as well. But I was very inspired by the brothers always, and I thought I would become a Patrician brother at one stage. But then the Redemptorists came to Carrickmacross doing their traditional mission. And from there somehow, in the workings of things, I couldn't clearly identify how it happened, but I got invited to visit Dundalk. Imagine at 15 years of age.
You went to Dundalk?
I was 15 when I was invited over. There is no way under the current regulations for church that you could bring a 15-year-old into the monastery.
No.
Let alone be sort of trying to hook them in for religious life. I joined at 16, and we wouldn't let somebody in now until they'd be 18, 19, 20, But I went in at 16. Often think back, if things were different, if I was running the clock all over again, would I head in the same direction? I don't know. It's been good and it's been bad, and it's been great and it's been difficult. But I suppose in the balance of things, it has been wonderful.
Yeah, but your strength comes when the person says to you, whether it be an old lady or an old man or a child or a boy or girl you've helped, says, "Look, thanks, Michael."
Oh, absolutely.
You're doing the right thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And people have got way better at that, I think, because they know how difficult our life is now. In terms of priesthood, it's become quite stretched because there are so few around, and it's a few of us that are doing all the work. So I'm very grateful to people being grateful. And I encourage people to try and express their gratitude, in clearer ways,
in every sphere of life.
But
people
they
meet.
In church in particular, because I'll tell you, negative things carry great weight in church. A negative letter to your bishop, a negative letter to Rome, a negative from anybody who is negative, that carries great weight. Positive ones are rarely written. So I said to people, look, if you think your priest is doing good, or if you're like yesterday, I mean, I'm going back to the house now to write a wee note to Father Benny Fee.
Benny, he did the great work up in the country.
My God. I mean, the things he said at the funeral of that young lad yesterday, I mean, they're very impressive.
Absolutely.
And they're challenging, and they're on the money, really, in terms of where we're at in terms of social media. And he's very much right, in what he says there. Now, a letter to him to say, look, dear Benny, I appreciate how difficult the situation was you found yourself in. Thank you for voicing, a very clear message, and well done, and God bless you. that can carry a man,
Absolutely.
3 and 4 weeks.
I know we need that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we bluff ourselves into thinking
Knockers are everywhere. People are very glad to knock you and criticise you and say what a load of rubbish was going on there. But we do need it. And I actually have a box. This is pretty sad, maybe. Thank God I don't have to take it out too often. But I have a box kept in my room, not of every card I've ever received, but of certain cards I received, to remind me, in difficult times, that God has worked powerfully through me, or that I have helped people. Notwithstanding my faults and failings, God has done great things through me, and I actually keep that box.
It's important. I understand that. I have such a box as well, and it buoys one up. It keeps one going. It does,
As I say, I'm glad I don't have to take it down
too often,
but I know it's there.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell me about the God in your life. How certain are you?
I need God, so I have to be certain. Actually, saying Mass before coming over here, the thought went through my head about, what if you didn't believe? Like, I think if I didn't believe, my life certainly would be so much more difficult. I don't know what is worthwhile, what is worth it in life without a faith structure. There clearly are loads of people who don't have it, and they seem to manage, but I think life's too damn difficult. If you didn't have an understanding that it's just an imperfect place where we're journeying to something greater, and in the next life, please God, we're all gathered into some sort of a peaceful existence. The search for peace is the big thing, of course, for all of us. And do you find peace in your relationship? Do you find peace in yourself? Do you find peace in who you are, in being who you are? It's that loss of peace that leads to despair and leads to people ending their lives. And, lots of breakdowns in life happen because of a lack of peace.
You're echoing thoughts and mantras of my man of Africa, Donald Kahan, a Cork man. He's an SMA, 46 years of age. We've been building schools for the last 10 years. And I asked him that question. In the bush tracks of northwest Nigeria, why do you do it? This isn't easy. This is difficult. What's it all about? He says, Ron, this is what I have to do. I know God is with me. And I don't want to be on this planet one day more than is necessary for doing God's job. It's a good handle on things, a very strong kind of thing. And I get a lot from that. For example, when I did the book, this little Caritas et Amor, my book of Africa and India, the travels, I wondered how I was going to start it off. And it's relevant to what we're talking about, I think. I thought I'd put everything in the bracket of God, from beginning to end. And the prologue, for example, it starts with a psalm. In the tender compassion of our God, the dawn from on high shall break upon us, to shine on those who dwell in darkness and in the shadows of death, and to guide our feet on the road of peace. That's the prologue. And then at the very end, after the whole story of Africa and its challenges, and India and its colour and beauty, the epilogue, now that the day has come to a close, I thank you, Lord of creation, for keeping me safe throughout this day. I bless you for everything, for evening light, and will always walk in your footsteps, in the footsteps of love. Holy are you, O Lord, have mercy on me and on the whole world. That for me does it. Everything that's in between has an immediate start. It's got a blessing immediately. And that's a very strong feeling.
It's a lovely book. It's a pity you don't publish it, actually, because I think it does a lot for the whole missionary movement as well. And the missionary movement is as strong now probably as ever. We don't have the same formula going on, but the giving is still there, and there's great generosity in terms of young people giving of their time. Now, I suppose there could be a debate had about, could resources be used differently? These 6-week stints that people get, are they worthwhile? You have to hope that they are, that they're sort of transforming moments in people's lives that help them to be grateful for what they have, help them to see the world in a different way, and help them to understand something of the plight of the bigger part of our world.
There's a young man comes in here. He also goes to Zambia, Barry Trainer. He works in Kitwe with the street children. He's been going out for the last 5 or 6 years. He's done great things there. Strong young man from this part of the world. And again, he's God-driven. Part of the Friends of Africa out of Drummondine, you know.
Right, yeah.
And you have a young priest who has gone recently to Mozambique.
Yeah, Derek Ryan, yeah. We have a new mission actually in Mozambique. I mean, we're a missionary order, and I suppose when our numbers became restricted and are dwindling, we're faced with the challenge of saying, okay, is it over? Or do we continue to do what we do best? And that's what we decided. Even though we're stretched, let us convince ourselves that the mission continues, and therefore we set up a new mission. You know, we could have done with all those young men here in Ireland,
yes, of course.
shoring up the different houses. But no, we've opened a mission with the Brazilians, our own mission there. And it's in a place called Tet in north western Mozambique, on the borders with Malawi, and it will eventually cross into Malawi, where we'll be able to have like a more English-speaking people. Currently, we're working through Portuguese. Is it primary evangelization, or are you in an urban setting, which is? Oh, it's not urban. No, it's extremely rural, and it's abandoned setting. Rather, it's not primary in ways. The people have had their faith and they've carried it through on their own. There's a part of it's a little bit iffy for me, like in a way, because I'd sort of think, well, they actually managed on their own and had their God and their beliefs. You know, why are we coming in now? And the first thing, of course, is always to build a church. So they're building a church at the moment up on the top of this mountain in Furan Congo. But you know, if that's what makes the people feel good and helps, it seems to be one of the wishes of the community that they would have always had this. They have these 4 or 5 missionaries there with them now, with the commitment to build community with them. But, you know, I think remodeling our way of being missionaries is important, and working on trying to work on homilies for the Clonard Novena, which begins next week. But the opening day is on new wine skins, you know, is the sort of theme. And I keep being dragged into this thinking about church. You know, I mean, do we need to dismantle everything and begin again? Or what is it that you can take from the old? You know, what is worth preserving and bringing forward? Now, clearly, the message is worth preserving, but how do we frame it? Like, into what container does that go now in the world we're living in? Big churches? Not sure. They don't serve us so well anymore. They certainly don't attract the younger generation. I mean, it doesn't speak to them. So if you want to speak to them, what type of building, what type of place? Is it a building? Is it a presence, as in being present in people's lives? How do you best do that? You know, where do you give the witness and be the witness in?
I share the doubts about edifices, but having said that, you and I both know the inspirational joy that comes from being inside a beautiful building. Fires you up, whether you Mozambique, me in Africa or India, when you go there into those places, you're again similarly fired. You're lifted and brought forward.
You are, and they're important. I mean, they're important as I suppose symbols that reverence our God and give us a place of context. You know, St. Joseph's in Dundalk, everybody will say it, and I don't mind touting my own church, is the nicest church. It's because people will say, you'd hear them saying, I don't know what it is about it, but it's certainly homely. They feel that they've arrived home when they come into that church. It's prayerful. It's not spooky. It's not dark and dull. There's always movement in it. There are people there all the time. I'm sure there are several churches like that here in Uri. But certainly for us, St. Joseph's has that. Now, that is good in itself. But these buildings are also top-heavy in terms of maintenance. You have preservation orders all over the place that don't allow you to adapt or change the structure you have. You're stuck with it. You have heating bills that are colossal. You have a roof that needs repair. I mean, none of the bills are small. So just as we are now planning, you know, the re-roofing of the church, just as that happens, the organ needs repair. Now, when an organ needs repair, it's not like hopping down to the music shop and getting your £500 organ. You know, you add another 3 knots to that sum, and you're sort of maybe get something done then. So it's all about money, and then you're wondering, well, is that the best use of resources? Now, at a time when there's less and less money because there's less and less attending, you know. And I'm not whinging about money at all. We're so well looked after in Dundalk by the people. So, but those questions are there. I mean, we did it about the extension of the monastery. We had very big plans that involved just projecting out, you know, a new building, nearly way too much of a building. And we're sitting back and thinking, my God, is that what we need to do right now? I know we need a new roof. I know we're in breach of health and safety with certain things that we need to get in place. But is the way forward to build a building that will accommodate 25 people when we know in our hearts and souls there won't be 5 in it, you know? So these are sort of the issues, I suppose. And the big one is being church, how to be church and be bearers of the message. Because I'll tell you, there's nothing I'm more certain of. The need was never greater. But there are great people there, you know.
Yes.
And I find when we use what we have around baptism, around funerals, around any encounter with the people that we meet, if we use it well, then there is a message being carried. You know, there's a message of, I can actually approach that man. Or these are not the monsters that we've read of, you know. Or this man isn't as out of touch as I had been led to believe, you know, that I can actually find my way, as many people do, into a confession box quietly or confessional room and say, look, my life's in bits. I want to begin again. I don't really know where to start, but I know that I want God on my side, and thanks for the help. And then how much is that, point. Father? Nothing. No. Go in peace.
No, you know? Go in peace.
Which is great.
I remember going to my last confession was at Santiago de Compostela 10 years ago. God. And I was standing at the back of the church, and it was the Bota Perfumo was going, the smoke was coming up, and all the rest of it. And I saw the priest, and the sign said English. I was drawn to go. I said, Father, it's so long since my last confession, I can't remember what to say. I said, well, don't leave it as long to you. How long? I said, it's 34 years. He said, don't leave it as long till you come again, my son. I said, well, chance would be a fine thing. It would take me to about 92, you know. So
I'll roster you in for a day or two next week.
We laughed a wee bit about that, and thank you for that. Yeah. But he then said, I said, I can't figure it. I genuinely, it was difficult to say I did that, and that wrong. Because by and large, like a lot of people, one tries to live one's life in a certain way. And I said, maybe I've hated too much and loved too many. Maybe that. He said, that covers it. And I was telling Billy down in SMA in Cork in the Blackrock Road, a priest back from Africa, small man, round face, big white beard. It was the Sunday evening get-together of the retired fathers, and we're having a few drinks together, and we're laughing, we're talking, we're chatting. I was telling him that story, and he was getting very dramatic. And he said, well, I wouldn't have let you off as easily. He says, I didn't get a penance.
Right.
And I told him this. He said, I wouldn't have let you off that easily. He said, as a matter of fact, a confession without a penance is flawed.
But you see, as I'm listening to you and as you told that story, I'm just glad that you met somebody that was nice and that was receptive and that didn't give out to you and that didn't say to you, what the hell were you doing for the last 34 years? No. But that happens. Let me tell you, I have...
Would that still happen?
Oh, well, I don't know would it still, but I mean, I know that I have gone to confession in places at times with no major story to tell, but have been made feel damn bad, you know. And that's not a good story. I mean, it has to be the one of the loving embrace that sort of says, you know, I'm delighted that you're here. Don't be feeling bad about the fact that it's 30 years or 40 years. I'm very happy. And if I'm happy, can you imagine where God is on this one? You know, you have actually turned now your step and you've decided to go in the direction of God. Not that you were wandering too far away. No, indeed. But you've known to come back and receive that embrace. And I would be wholeheartedly wanting that person to go out and celebrate. And I'd normally say, look, do you like a cup of coffee or a drink? Go out and have one. And be glad. And share the joy with somebody or certainly with yourself.
This is the day. This is the day the Lord has sent. Let us rejoice and be glad.
Absolutely, and be happy about it. You know, because that gives the lift. You know, my little man last night that I was talking to. You know, I'd love to have been able to hand him something that would say, "Look, tomorrow will be a better day," because he suffers with depression. You know, but I did give him a little blessing, and I, you know, laid my hand on him, and I said, you know, I'll be praying for you, and I will. I will pray for him because it's terrible to look at somebody struggling, and please God, he might remember even that touch.
It makes a difference.
You know, that would say, well, I can draw on that. I'll draw on that bit of positive energy that's given in my direction.
It's about that positive energy.
It is really.
And at the heart of positive energy, I like to feel, and I believe, is the Christian God.
Absolutely, yeah. And you know, there are a whole lot of movements, I suppose, in the world today that are secular, you know, in terms of this holistic approach. But part of the holistic approach is being holistic.
Yeah,
it's
and
bringing God along in it, you know, not shelving God and saying this is the alternative. It's not about alternatives.
No.
It's about completion.
Yes.
And it's about bringing everything together, you know, and that cannot. There's room for it all.
Absolutely.
You know, in the new society or world that we want to build, there's more than plenty of room for a God that says, I am the Lord your God. You know, love me with all your heart, soul and mind, and love your neighbour as yourself. I mean, what better mission statement could you have for the world than to say we're going to try and love one another? That includes acceptance, it includes getting rid of prejudice, it includes looking after refugees, it includes responding to natural disasters, you know, it includes promoting life, it includes comforting the dying, you know, it's all those things. And what better mission statement or constitution to have than to say that's going to be our primary one?
We leave it there.
Okay.
Thank you so much. You're a good man.
Not at all.
God bless you.
Thank you. Thanks. The best of luck.